Great, thank you so much. Welcome everyone. Some of you may have seen me on the panel with Greg, and it was great. I actually sat through Greg's talk, which was actually perfect interlude into this talk here, because a lot of what Greg says, I definitely agree with and resonate with, and it is, a lot about starting a business and running a business is about selling, and pitching really comes into that. So just to understand who's in the room, who currently has a business? Amazing. And is it those that didn't put the hand up, are you thinking about starting a business or you have an idea? Looking at you at the back. Or are you just here to absorb and learn? Great. That's absolutely fine. So, session objectives. So when I got asked to do this, that was a long time ago. And as Greg said, it's good to keep going. But obviously, as it gets closer, you're like, oh no. And when I found out it was 30 minutes, I was even more like, how am I going to do this? Because pitching workshops usually run over a day or 2 days. So 30 minutes, it's going to be interesting. But what I can do in 30 minutes is I can give you a taster of what a pitching workshop would be like, on an accelerator, what we would cover. And also just talk a little bit off the cuff about some of these things, answer questions. I do have a little pitching activity if we have time as well, because it's very unusual to have a pitching workshop without pitching. So I'll try and get that in. But a little bit about me before we begin. So my previous life was working in corporate. So I worked for Unilever and Diageo, was a bit like, why am I in this corporate machine? There's something more out there, and found myself then working in the NatWest Accelerator. So I don't know if any of you came across it was called Entrepreneurial Spark back in the day, but really interesting story that I could go into. But basically, all of these hubs across the UK called hatcheries, and all the businesses were called chicklets. And my job as a hatchery manager was to coach the chicklets on how to pitch. So lots and lots of experience of pitching. So in the NatWest Accelerator, I was in charge in Brighton for 50 chicklets in my hatchery, and then I moved to Manchester and another 50 chicklets. So lots of pitching. The chicklets had to pitch every 2 weeks. So they'd have a meeting with me every 2 weeks. They've got to do the 60-second pitch. Then every other Wednesday night, there'd be an event night, which you had to come to, or unless you got kicked off the programme. So it was very cutthroat. But so that was my first soiree into the startup life, which was very hardcore. Some of you might know Christina and Southeast Angels. She went through and worked at the NatWest Accelerator. So did Fiona, who was on the panel. So I always think of the NatWest Accelerator a little bit like Disney Channel or something, like Britney Spears or Christina went there and then they learn the ropes and then they go out and do their own thing. So that's kind of what the NatWest Accelerator was like. Some people don't know the chicklet history, but it's very weird and it's really interesting. So left there, I went to work for Wild Sussex and ended up at the Digital Catapult running a 5G accelerator. Don't ask me what 5G is. I wouldn't be able to tell you. It's something about faster internet. But anyway, lots of tech. And I was like, oh, I hate this. And my whole thing really is about distilling complex information. So working with people who run tech businesses and helping them communicate it in a way that the average person would understand. Went to PlusX Innovation, ran a £5 million innovation project for scale-ups. That was really interesting over 3 years. Went to Wild Sussex to be their innovation director. And then the company folded last year in November, liquidated, which was very, very sad. But it did give me that opportunity, which some of you may be familiar with, is when you get made redundant and you think, do I look for another job or do I just start up on my own? So that's what I did. So it's coming up to a year. At the end of this month, I will have been on my own. So I've been supporting startups for all that time and finally have a year under my belt. So it's obviously a great experience and it's never quite what you actually think it's going to be. But really my business, it's all around program design, innovation consultancy, coaching and mentoring and workshops. So pretty much what I was doing before, but doing it across all of these lovely organisations, including Digital Islands, which is sat right here. Hi, Gavin. So two programs that are maybe relevant because it's in the Create and Tech. So Create Southeast, which is an investment program that I'm an advisor and mentor for. And then I'm running and I've designed Arran Creative and Digital, which is obviously for Arran, other side of Sussex. But yeah, so working a lot with creatives and tech. So the importance of pitching. So I thought I'd find some stats. So first impressions really count. So apparently, on average, 7 seconds to make a first impression on somebody, which is not a lot of time at all. Reviewing of a pitch deck. Investors typically make a decision on a pitch deck after 3 minutes and 44 seconds. Storytelling, if you use stories and talking about experience that are personal to you, is 22 times more memorable. So this is like what's really important for people that work in tech, not just to concentrate on the tech and actually you as a founder. And securing funding, 40 times more likely to secure funding versus technical focus. So that's like building a really good pitch deck that's rounded rather than just going, this is our product and it's got all these technical features. So just thought that was interesting to pull some stats. Didn't remember to put the sources on, so Microsoft and various sources were used to find these stats. So the benefits of pitching, lots of benefits here. So if you were in the panel, I got asked about what was my number one advice for people starting up. And it is about distilling what you do in a way that someone can quickly understand what your business idea is, so they can decide, do I want to buy it? Do I want to be involved? And the benefits of pitching, I have had so many startups over the years say to me, oh, I don't want to do this pitch. I don't like, no one likes to be put into a box. I don't want to follow this formula. I just want to talk about my business like authentically. And that's absolutely fine. But actually the process of pitching is where the beauty of it is. It's not necessarily the pitch that you get at the end. You don't have to say it in a particular way, but going through a process and a structure can really, really help you condense your idea into a succinct sentence. So Greg was speaking before, if you were in the room with us, 2 years to turn your business idea into a really succinct form. So these things, they don't happen overnight. It's not like you're going to come to this workshop and you're going to go home with a pitch. However, understanding how this process can work and how other things kind of go into pitching, where it fits in the wider puzzle, is really beneficial. We talked about public speaking experience, so just putting yourself forward. There's pitch competitions out there, there's accelerators, lots of opportunities that you can get more public experience by pitching. Handling objections, like we said, it's all about getting your idea out there so people can say, but why would that work? And I don't understand that, because you want that experience, because you want to know, okay, somebody doesn't understand. If someone's asking you, oh, but I don't get it, but why, maybe you haven't got it as succinct as you possibly could. Making a lasting impression, so strong pitches, obviously people are going to remember. There's definitely ones over the years where I still remember really distinctly the business because they've pitched in such a way that's made me think that will always stick in my mind. And obviously expanding your network, so pitching competition or events builds awareness and you can put yourself out there and people will know about your business. But today I could have just done a pitch workshop about investment, how to gain investment through pitching. But I think pitches are really great for a multitude of purposes. So obviously investment where you're pitching for money or exchange for equity, but also partnerships, customer acquisition, so helping to articulate value to customers, recruitment, actually, when you're trying to hire in your team and they're like, why should I, work for you? Because obviously Gen Z are going to ask that, like, why should I work for you? And then you've got to pitch to them, actually, this is why you should work in our company. And then for media and publicity, so if you want to get on podcasts, if you want to get articles in magazines, you have to pitch actually why it's an interesting business to write about. Pitch decks. So everyone's like, oh, what needs to go in a pitch deck, or how do you create a pitch deck? And actually, there shouldn't, in my opinion, just be one pitch deck. You should have lots of different pitch decks for lots of different situations. So with the pitch, it's all about learning the basics to then tailor to your audience. So you can have an elevator pitch, which doesn't really come with the deck. Investor pitch deck, which is more typical, but you will have sales pitch deck. Partnership pitch deck, a demo pitch deck, and a customer pitch deck. So that's customer facing. Because when I've gone on investment programs before, I've had people go, oh, but I don't know, like, I'm not looking for investment. I don't think this is relevant to me. But actually it is, because if you're wanting to go and get clients, you're going to have to pitch, especially if you've got like a creative technical business, how it works, why they should buy it. So learning the fundamentals of kind of pitch decks as well is actually really beneficial to your business. So why should you pitch? What are the key aspects? Well, it's all about persuasion. So basically what you're trying to do is you're trying to persuade the audience to support or invest in your idea. As we said, it's clarity. So somebody getting it really quickly. As we said, attention spans, really, really short. If you're in a networking event, people do switch off. You can see people's eyes glazing over. Have they actually got what you're talking about? Or if you're getting to it 10 minutes in, they might have lost. They might be thinking what they're going to have for dinner rather than focusing on what the point that you were trying to make. So it's about trying to get to the point really, really quickly. And in a way, and this is what's really difficult with tech and digital, in a way that people understand. Because if you're working in AI and have lots of big technologies that people don't understand, like even talking about AI downstairs, I was like inputs, outputs, and it's like just reminding me of like A-level technology classes. It's just sometimes the terminology, it needs to be more on the level of anyone can understand it. So getting pitching is all about getting comfortable with being uncomfortable. So it is very uncomfortable pitching your business, but that is the whole point. But the more that you do it, the more that you put yourself in those situations and you challenge yourself to pitch, the more comfortable you are going to be. And it's not going to be uncomfortable anymore. And I have a video in a little while of somebody that I've worked with over the years, a business who's gone through this whole pitching journey. And I just said to him on WhatsApp, can you send me a video of your pitch? And he was in a car park and he just took a video of himself pitching, because that's how comfortable he now feels about it and is hopefully okay with me sharing it today. So what we're going to talk about today is what makes a good pitch. So we're going to talk a little bit about content, talk a little bit about delivery, but the most part is going to be about structure. So what I'm going to show you in this very short session is give you a little insight into what I used to teach on the NatWest Accelerator and what we kind of go through on other programs. It's really, really simple. You'd be like, wow, that, but it's actually the practice of that. But it's just about showing you how simple it doesn't need to be complicated. So I get asked this all the time, as many the business advisors will, what investors are typically working for. So this pitching stage is stage one. This is all about, before you go any further, the investor is thinking, when you're pitching, does this meet my investor portfolio? And this will, a lot of the time you should have done this research already. So you're not pitching to an investor that likes just working with people that work in plants when you're a tech business. And I think it's very important for creative industries, because there are going to be a lot of investors out there that love tech and AI and it's all new. But if you're in the creative industries like music or film, it is much more difficult to find those investors. They are out there, but you need to do your research to make sure that they will actually invest, or you're wasting yours and their time. Do I understand the vision of the business? Do I like the founders? This came up downstairs as a topic, which is about, you might have an amazing business idea, but if the investor thinks you're a bit of a knob, then they're not going to want to invest in you. They're not going to trust you. And you might have heard the term like skin in the game. Investors want to see that you're really dedicated to this business idea, but also they can trust you. You're not going to just suddenly go, actually, I'm going to go back to a corporate job, or I fancy just selling it all and going off to Hawaii. So it's all about, do I like the founders? Do I trust them? And, it's about telling this story. So we talk about storytelling. I know there's another storytelling workshop today, but storytelling is really important, because we just, as a society, remember stories much more than we remember technical features and benefits of a product. And something about deal terms, all that kind of thing. Step two is deep dive into details and admin checks. But this step one is the whole pitch. You have to grab their attention, and they have to feel like they could invest in you. And that's where pitching comes in, because if you can deliver a really good pitch, if investment is even what you want, I'm not suggesting that it is, but obviously if you come into a pitch workshop, it might be what you're thinking about. So diving into content. So content tips. So try not to use, and this goes without saying really, but acronyms, abbreviations. But it's so funny how many of us do it. Like I do it all the time. I'm always like, oh, have you got an MVP? And I was like, what is MVP? And it's like, oh yeah, minimal viable product. So even though I talk about not using acronyms, even I will always use them. No advertising speak. So saying like, this is the most fantastic, blah, blah, blah. It's just not going to work in a pitch. It's all about trying to get the problem and the solution across, not trying to make it sound like this amazing thing. So no jargon, keep it really simple. And good test is, would a child or some random person in the street understand? And the best way to do that is, if you've got children in your family, try and tell them what your business idea is, see if they understand it. And if they don't, is there a way that you can break it down and use an analogy to the point where a child would understand, because it's actually quite challenging to do that. But it's, again, a really good test and a process to go through to be like, do you understand your business to the point where you can explain it to anybody? The most important thing, I think, with pitching, and this is where I love pitching so much, because it forces you to go down other routes. So in order for you to be able to come up with an effective pitch, you have to really understand the problem that you're solving. And in order to do that, that's going to take a little bit of work as well. So you're going to have to, you might have just come up with an idea. It's an amazing idea. You have the problem. Do other people have the problem? So Greg mentioned before in his talk, you need to go out there. You need to find these people that are not just your friends and family who have the problem that you have. And if they don't have the problem and it's just you, maybe it's not a great business idea because no one's going to buy it. But if you think, actually, this is, lots of people have this pain point, but how big is the pain point? Do you really understand how big the problem is? And it might be a small problem. It might not be a burning problem. So the most effective, businesses that I see are trying to solve something that people are actively trying to, it's not like a small problem, like, I have a hot water bottle, but it'd be nice to have one that's slightly bigger or smaller. And I say this because I bought my son, they've started doing long hot water bottles, which is very strange. I like it, but it's not a problem that I had before I saw it. It's just a nice to have. So it's thinking, is this a really big pain point? And, there will be bits of that problem that are bigger pain points than others. So it's kind of figuring that out. How are people already trying to solve this problem? I cannot tell you the amount of times when I've spoken to businesses and said, have you got any competitors? And they're like, no, I'm the only person doing this in the market. And it's like, yes. And that could be true, that it could be so unique that it is the only person in the market. However, usually people are spending either time or money. So if they're going to have to use time to interact with your service or product, that's taking time away from something else. So it might not be an equivalent service or product, but it's going to be something else. So like thinking about Netflix, if they're going to watch something on Netflix, they're not going to be going to the gym or going to the park. So there's always a trade-off. So it's thinking, what are people already doing? And then try and make it relatable to the audience. So they might, if you're pitching to investors or a panel, they might not have the problem that you're having. And that's absolutely fine. You can't guarantee that. However, you can say, what it's like, this problem that I have, like if it was a problem for me as a woman and you're a man, I can say it's the equivalent of this, so that you can at least relate to it. So I think that's really important, because unless you can convince somebody opposite you that this is a problem, when you get to the solution part, if they're not convinced it's a problem, they'll be like, yeah, this isn't going to work because there's not a big enough problem, there's not a market there. So the solutions are almost a moot point. Okay, so we talked about storytelling a little bit. So storytelling, I think, is really important. And it comes back to that. Do investors or the people listening to you like you as a person? And storytelling is a great way, obviously, to make yourself relatable and human. So talking about your actual lived experiences. So some pictures that I've heard recently have been really impactful, of where somebody, like for a sustainable solution, again, I can't remember what the actual business is, but what I do remember is this guy was so passionate about sustainability because of his son and wanting his son to grow up in a better world than he was growing up in. And it was so impactful, and he won the pitching competition. And I'm, convinced the story really helped with that, because everybody engaged with him. And then when he got to the solution part, even though I don't remember, it was really good because everybody was listening and, kind of switched on. So storytelling is something that you can, research. You can go and Google it. There's so many books on storytelling and how to kind of work on that for your business more generally, but then as a pitch. But I would say it's when we come onto the structure, it's thinking, how do I bring my personal experience into this? So it's not just something that's just standardized. But, don't be afraid to bring your experience and your personality through into the pitch. I'd say it's much more memorable and effective if you do. So an example of how storytelling can be used in a pitch. So before, I was doing a pitch and saying, we provide a project management tool that increases efficiency by 30%. It integrates with multiple platforms and is scalable for all business sizes. That sounds okay, but if you were to make that more personal, you could say something like, 2 years ago, I was leading a remote team that was struggling to stay organized. Our meetings felt quite chaotic, deadlines slipped. It became clear that the tools we were using were not for the modern way teams operate. So we created the solution. It's a project management platform that brings all our tools together. So this is just a simple example to show that if it's based on something, it's not just, you know, something that is up here, like no relation whatsoever. I think it's much more effective, and people are going to think you've actually been through that, you understand, or you've got family, and they've been the more effective pitches that I've heard. Okay, so moving on to the structure. So this is the main bulk of the workshop. There are, and winning pitch, there's so many pitch structures out there, but these are the ones that I have worked with in the past and have been really effective because it's really simple and easy to remember. So the 1 minute pitch, which we're going to focus on today, is just hook, problem, solution, traction, and ask. And by only having 5 points and keeping it simple, the idea is that whoever you talk to, a networking event or anything, you can actually chop and change that structure as you see fit. So in an accelerator, you would go through the structure step by step. But the idea is you remember the little sentences for each bit, and then you can on the spot kind of play with it. The 7 minutes is more if we were talking about an investment pitch deck. So we'd obviously have a bit more time. So maybe, you know, like 7 to 10 minutes to run through that, where you're going to talk in more detail. But I'd say definitely always start with a 1 minute, because it's much easier to expand on something than it is to shorten it. If you create 7 minutes and then you're like, damn, I've got an accelerator or a pitch competition for 1 minute, you're going to be like, what do I cut out? I don't know what to cut out because I really need this bit and I really need that bit, and I need to talk about the business model. Whereas actually 1 minute going up to 7, you're like, oh, I've got more time to expand on things. This is great. So 1 minute is definitely more challenging, but it's definitely worth doing. So what is a hook? So a hook is a way to establish rapport quickly, capture attention, and make it really compelling. So it's a way to stop people, you know, they're thinking, oh God, here we go again, another pitch. But trying to get them to think and stop and say, you know, like make them think of the situation, make it relatable. So ones that I've heard in the past, a really good one that stands out is, it was something to do with a wedding business. And this girl who was doing it was like, you know, you're at the altar, you're in your wedding dress, you're looking down the aisle, and there you see him running towards you. The tongue is out, the saliva everywhere. And it was like, where is this going? And it was her business was around dogs at weddings, and something to do with that. But I was just thinking, where is this going? And it did grab my attention. And yeah, so I think things like that can be really effective, or using facts and figures to portray the scale of the problem. So an example I'm going to use is Airbnb, because Airbnb went for angel investment back in 2008, and this is the pitch deck that they used. And I quite like it because it is so simple. It's just like really, really simple. And they managed to win, you know, 600K. You know, the investment landscape has changed, so I'm not suggesting it would work today. However, I think it's a really good example of how, you know, simple it can be. So with Airbnb, their hook is book rooms with locals rather than hotels. They've managed to get their concept so succinct into a strap line that it just kind of says what it is on the tin. So a hook can be as simple as that as well. So the problem, so we talked about that. So defining the problem and opportunity, who has the pain and gain, how are they currently solving the problem, and convincing the investor or the person listening that this is a problem worth solving. So if we look at Airbnb again, so the problems here is price is a really important concern for customers booking online travel. Hotels leave you disconnected, and there's no easy way exists to book a room currently with a local host or become a host. So it's about trying to just get your problem across really succinctly, but really understanding that problem before you obviously get to this bit, because then you're much able to convince somebody of it. So Greg was saying in his previous talk about using that same language. So if you talk to customers and you ask them, what is the problem? How do you experience it? Then using that language in your pitch is much more effective. So solution, this is the bit you'll be more comfortable with. Obviously, this is your idea, so you're going to know all about this. And this is why we leave it till after the problem, because if you start off with a solution, if people don't think there's a problem, they're not going to be listening. And then if you say the problem after, they'll be like, oh yeah, this is a really big problem, but what did you say the solution was? So I think this is a much more effective way to have it, is the solution afterwards. So talking about how does it work, how you do things differently. This is your value proposition. And if you're not familiar with value proposition, there's some amazing tools online that you can tap into. So there's a website called Strategizer, which I always recommend. So Strategizer has the business model canvas. I don't know if you've heard of that. Again, a really good tool. But the value proposition canvas is all about trying to break down what your business does, what is your value proposition, and doing that piece of work actually makes you think about your idea or solution in a different way, because you're thinking about what are the customer gains, what are the customer pain points, so that you can actually articulate the solution in a slightly different way. So that piece of work kind of sits behind this part. So for example, with Airbnb, they're really simple slide here, which is just a web platform where users can rent out their space to host travelers, to save money, to make money, and to share culture. So that was their solution. So it's getting it across really succinctly so anyone can kind of go, okay, yeah, I get that. And I can imagine behind Airbnb, they had some kind of tech or some way of doing this, like there was a website and there was all of these things, but they don't talk about that. They're just talking about the solution from the customer's point of view. Okay, traction. So this is really obvious. What progress have you made today? What validation have you done? Because if you say all of this and we get to this point and you're like, I haven't spoken to anyone yet, then it's like, oh, well, you know, so this is just all, you know, your assumptions. Whereas attraction is like, well, who have you, I've spoken to people, I've actually sold this amount, we've been going for this amount of years. So that is a really important part. So for example, with Airbnb, they'd already been going and they were able to say, this is the feedback that we're getting from actual customers. So people are buying this, it's validating their idea. Finally, really important that a lot of pitchers don't include this, and I can't believe that they don't, is an ask. So even if you're not pitching for investment, if you're standing up in front of a group of people, why are you not asking for exactly what you want? So if someone said to me earlier, I really need marketing support at the moment, and that is like, yeah, why not ask that? Does anybody know a great marketeer that does this, this, and this? So when I got made redundant last November, I went straight onto LinkedIn and was like, right, being made redundant, I'm setting up my own business. If anyone can support me in any way, let me know. And my logo, it's not up here yet, but it's somewhere. Someone gave me that free. Someone else has offered to build me a website. It's just amazing what you get when you actually ask for help or resources. So for example, Airbnb, this is what they asked for, which is, just an example of a simple way you can portray the slide. Is this going to work? I've lost Jack. Okay, there was a video of Jack, but it has disappeared, which is a bit frustrating. There he is. It's another tech calamity. Anyway, so you won't hear from Jack today. He'll be very happy about that. So body language, engaged, eye contact, smile, thinking about posture. There's a really great TED talk. Emma Cuddy talks about power poses and how you can improve your delivery and body language. So I'd recommend checking that out if you haven't seen that.
What's her name, sorry?
Amy Cuddy.
Amy?
Cuddy with a double D.
Thank you.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm rattling through because I've had my time. And asking for feedback. So you will only get better at pitching and public speaking if you ask for feedback. Get people to listen to your pitch, comment, tap into free business support because you can practice pitching there. So there's lots of different ways, but asking for feedback is really crucial. And there are pitch clubs around the UK as well. So if you are interested in practicing pitching, just Google pitch clubs because there will be them. Somewhere where founders are getting together and practicing pitching together, because I'd say better than a business advisor, founders can give each other much better advice about their pitching. Okay, so I don't think we've got time to try it, but please take a screenshot of this and as homework that I'm not giving you, please go away and try and put together your pitch. So for this exercise, I was going to do name because I thought it was a bit mean to make you come up with a hook off the cuff, but usually it is hook, problem, solution, traction, ask. And wrap up. So yeah, the idea is that you can use this pitch in a variety of different situations. It's not just for investing. Pitching under 1 minute is designed to be a challenge, so it is not going to be an easy thing, but it is, I guarantee you, it's worth doing, because when there is a story actually about one of the founders I've worked with, he was in the bathroom somewhere with an investor. It's like guy next to him chatting away, as men do in the toilets. And he was like, yeah, I'm an investor. And he was like, right, I'm going to pitch to you. So pitch to him in the toilets, which is amazing. He didn't get the investment, but I was like, good on you, using your 1 minute pitch. Yeah, so the tech is just a visual tool. You're the star of the show. So yes, slides are useful, but as you can see, just keep them simple. It's not the be all and end all, and practice makes perfect. So I just wanted to let you know as well before we wrap up further support. So I'm plugging a program that I'm on at the moment, so Big Ambitions, where you can work with me for free, which is always nice. So funded programs are the best because you get it for free. And I reiterate again what Greg was saying, that I don't believe in charging startups huge amounts of money when they don't have huge amounts of money. There's plenty of business support programs out there, so make sure that you do your research because you can get a lot of free support in the beginning. You don't have to pay business coaches and advisors loads of money. But if you do want to work with me one-on-one, you can reach me on my LinkedIn. So thank you very much.